Have you ever dealt with someone whose behavior was just so hurtful, so bafflingly cruel, that it felt like something was fundamentally missing inside of them? Well, today we're going to dive into a really unique spiritual framework that tries to explain that profound and, let's be honest, often painful mystery.
And this quote really gets to the heart of it. Think about those moments, that chilling lack of remorse you might have seen, a lie told without even blinking, or a total inability to feel your pain. This idea suggests that these aren't just character flaws. Nope. They're the result of a deliberate, intentional disconnection from something much deeper.
And this is the question, isn't it? It's the one that haunts you. It keeps you up at night, trying to solve an unsolvable puzzle. How is it even possible for a person to play by a completely different set of rules than, the rest of humanity?
To try and answer that, we're going to explore this concept of a deal with darkness. Now, let's be super clear here. We're using this as a powerful spiritual metaphor to understand a pattern of behavior. We're not talking about literal demons with pitchforks, but about a symbolic choice that has these massive, profound consequences for a person's soul. The core idea here is that this person has essentially broken their own spiritual compass. The behaviors that we see, the cruelty, the manipulation, those are just symptoms of this much deeper issue. And once that internal compass is gone, the normal rules of human connection and decency just don't apply anymore. So how does this disconnection even happen? It happens through what this framework calls a spiritual contract. And this isn't necessarily a single moment, but a pivotal, conscious choice made at a really deep internal level. It's that moment when a person chooses their ego over their soul.
So here's what that deal really is. It's an inside job. It's an internal transaction where they trade their true, authentic self for a carefully constructed facade, what we call the false self, because they believe it offers them more power, more control, and frankly, more safety.
And you can really see the two paths laid out here. On one side, you have the authentic soul. It's connected to truth, it's vulnerable, and it seeks real connection. But the false self, the path that was chosen, it operates on lies, it needs to feel superior and in control, and it's constantly chasing admiration. It is, for all intents and purposes, spiritually dead.
And that's the big question, right? Why on earth would anyone choose this path? It seems crazy. But the answer, tragically, often comes down to a twisted form of spiritual survival.
Just imagine, for a second, growing up in an environment where being your true, authentic, vulnerable self only led to pain or ridicule or even danger. In that kind of situation, building this tough, untouchable, superior facade, the false self, can feel like the only way to protect what's left of your wounded soul. It feels like armor.
Now, this is a really, really important distinction to make. This framework is clear. Trauma can be an explanation for why that choice felt necessary, but it is never a justification for the behavior. I mean, think about it. So many people go through horrible things and they make a different choice. They become deeply empathetic. The key thing here is the individual's choice to build the armor instead of healing the wound. And like any deal made in darkness, this one comes with a heavy price. And it's an escalating one. Maintaining that facade, that false self, it requires a lifetime of spiritual payments. It's a debt that just keeps compounding over time.
The source breaks this debt down into 5 core payments. These are the essential qualities of a connected soul that gets sacrificed one by one. It starts with authenticity, then goes to empathy, which leads to losing inner peace, then real relationships, and finally, truth itself.
So the very first thing to go is the real you. Life is no longer something you live. It's something you perform. Every conversation, every single relationship becomes a transaction. It's just a tool to get admiration, to get supply, to feed the ego, instead of an opportunity for real, genuine connection.
And this brings us right back to that haunting question, that chilling, gut-wrenching moment when you realize that your genuine, raw pain is having absolutely zero emotional impact on them. And here's the answer. For them, empathy is a liability. It's dangerous. To keep up that facade of being strong and superior, they literally cannot afford to feel your pain. Because if they did, your suffering would threaten to connect them back to their own deep, hidden spiritual wounds, the very thing that false self was built to hide. Can you even imagine how absolutely exhausting that must be? Living in a constant state of high alert, always guarding the mask, paranoid that someone, maybe you, is going to see the terrified, wounded person hiding underneath. There's absolutely no inner peace in a life that's built on a lie.
And this explains why their relationships, even when they're surrounded by people who love them, feel so empty and hollow. Real intimacy requires vulnerability, and vulnerability is the exact currency they use to make their deal in the first place. So they're spiritually isolated, even in a crowded room. And this is the final, ultimate payment. They become so committed to their false story, their false narrative, that they actually start to believe their own lies. They gaslight themselves. At this point, their connection to objective, divine truth is completely severed, and they're trapped in a spiritual prison of their own making.
Okay, so we've explored the deep mechanics of this spiritual contract. But what does all of this actually mean for you? You know, the person on the receiving end of all this behavior. How does understanding this actually empower you?
This right here, this is probably the single most important takeaway. When you're pleading with them, when you're trying to get them to see your pain, you are not speaking to their authentic soul. You are speaking to a character, a role they are playing, and that character's only goal is to maintain control of the story.
So having this understanding gives you clarity. It gives you permission to stop waiting for a breakthrough that is never going to come. You can finally accept that they traded empathy for control. You can recognize you're dealing with a character, not a person. You can stop trying to rescue a soul that isn't asking to be saved. And most importantly, you can fully and unapologetically choose to honor your own truth and your own spiritual connection.
And that's really the final thought here. Understanding this framework isn't about judging them. It's about liberating yourself. Once you stop trying to make sense of their spiritual void, you are finally free to focus on filling your own life with light, with authenticity, and with truth. So the question is no longer about them. The question is now, how will you choose to honor your own truth?